Hello designers! Today we're going to create a collage using Photopea. The theme of this collage is going to be my favorite things. And just to be clear, I'm referring to your favorite things, not mine, your teacher. I want to show you guys a few examples that students have done in previous school years, and you guys will be able to determine how you want to go about with this collage. In this example, the student did a really good job making selections of each of our images and in stacking them, layering them in order to create the sense of depth. She also has a diversity of images here that represent things that she loves, so I thought she did a really wonderful job putting this collage together. In this example, the student chose to focus on her love of travel, and she collected a lot of different images of landmarks and used blending modes to try to blend all those images together. And as you can see, it looks really professional. Her image selections are pretty spot on, and she did a wonderful job. This student chose to personalize her work through the use of selfies that she had from her phone. So in addition to the images that she collected from stock photo sites, such as the ones that I linked for you in your Canvas assignment, she used images on her phone to personalize her work, and that just makes it a little bit more special. On the technical side, she did a really wonderful job layering the images and making a really strong focal point with the images and creating a sense of depth. These are all examples that you guys can view in your Canvas assignment, so let us go ahead and get started. We're going to go to photopea.com, and instead of opening an image and working from it directly, we're going to create a brand new project from scratch by selecting New Project. You guys will see that when I select New Project, I get a lot of different templates, but I'm going to ignore them. Instead, I want to go and look at the presets that Photopea has available for me. So the first one is social media. So if I wanted to create a YouTube banner or some kind of Twitter header, this would be a good starting point. But ideally with these collages, I would want to display them in the school. So you guys are going to need to be able to create a collage that I can print. We're going to select the print preset, and we are going to select the letter size option from the print preset. Now I would like you guys to take the moment and name your project. I just named mine My Favorite Things Collage. Please name your project document. You won't regret it, because later on we're going to have so many different tabs. It's going to be very hard for you to keep track of. So having named it, I'm just going to hit create, and this is what it looks like so far, just an empty blank document. If I were to print this right now, this would be the size of a sheet of copy paper. So what I want to do before I get started is actually do some kind of color in the background. So to do that, I'm going to go to the bottom of my layers panel, and you can see they have a little icon that looks like a yin-yang symbol, and it stands for the new adjustment layer. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to select color fill. By default, the color fill layer that it adds for me is in red. I don't want to use red for my background. So what I'll do to change that is I'll click on the little thumbnail for the color fill, and the color picker is going to open for me, so I can go and select any color of the rainbow that I want. I think I would like to start off with more of like a sky blue for my background. You guys can use any color that you guys want. Maybe a more gray version of teal is what I want to use. I always suggest starting out with some kind of neutral in a cool tone for your background, because it helps to just recede into space, and it helps for the images that you guys are going to add to stand out. So I'm going to click OK to save it. Now I'm ready to start adding images to my document. So I'm going to go to the File menu at the top and select Open. And I'm going to open the folder that I collected all my images in. All of these images were collected from pexels.com, a free copyright free stock photo sites, and that's where I expect you guys to get images from. I don't want you guys to use images from Google because that would be unethical. And what I'm gonna do is basically start adding a bunch of images to Photopea. I may want to work with just a few at a time because it can be a little bit overwhelming when you have a lot of different images open. Okay, all my images open, and they reflect a collection of my favorite things, from dogs to frosting to art supplies to art to food. So let's get started with this image. I think this is the image that I want to start off using for my collage. It depicts a pit bull. So what I want to do is I want to make a selection of this image, just the pit bull, not the background. I'm not interested in the window, not interested in anything else behind the pit bull. So I can use any combination of selection tools I want for this particular image. But the selection tool that I usually go for is the quick selection tool because it does most of the job for you with very little effort. You can find the quick selection tool in tool number 4 in your toolbar on the left hand side. I'm going to select quick selection. I can see my brush size is really small right now, so I might want to go up to my options bar and increase it. I can increase it by going to my options bar, and right over here it tells me how small my brush is, so I'm gonna increase the size of it, and when I drag over the image you can see it's gotten a lot bigger. There's 2 modes to the selection tool. Right now I have it set to the Unite mode, which is gonna add pixels to my selection, and I'll show you guys what I mean. So all I do is I click inside the image, and Photopea's done a fairly good job determining which parts of the image I want. Is it perfect? No. So this is where I might want to go in and try to correct some of those parts that Photopea didn't get. So I can see in trying to correct it actually added some of the background, but that's okay because I can fix that very easily. I can select the subtract option in my quick selection tool, and everywhere that I drag under the subtract option is gonna get eliminated. So you can see it eliminated the background and it now just has a dog. There's a few areas that do need corrections, so I am going to just lower the brush size again, and I'm going to go and add these parts to my selection that were missed the first time. If I make a mistake like I just did, I can usually just correct it by going back and forth, deleting parts of my selection and then adding them. Okay, so I spent a little bit of time correcting my selection, and now I'm ready to basically go and delete my background. But watch what happens when I press delete on my keyboard. That's not what I wanted. It deleted the dog. I want to keep the dog, not the background. So I'm going to undo my steps by pressing Ctrl Z on my keyboard. Ctrl Z is your best friend. It lets you undo any mistakes you've made. And instead, I'm going to go up to the options bar and go to select and deselect. Oh snap, I made a huge mistake. I just got rid of my selection. What shortcut could I possibly use to correct my mistake? Well, Ctrl Z is my friend, baby. Look at that. Selection is made once again. So let me go and actually do what I intended to do the first time. So I'm going to the select menu, and I'm gonna hit inverse to inverse my selection, and you guys will see that now the background is selected and the dog isn't. So when I hit delete in my keyboard, look at that. Now all I have is just the dog. If I want to get rid of the selection, and I know I have a selection when I see those marching ants, I could just go to the select menu and hit deselect. And now I don't see those marching ants anymore. So what I want to do now is actually go and transfer this image of the dog into my empty document for the collage. So I'm going to right click on the layer, select duplicate into, and then I can choose the destination where I want to put this particular image. So I'm going to select my favorite things collage, this document, and click OK. I'm done editing this dog, so I can safely go and X out of it. And if I go and click on the tab for my favorite things collage, here is the image of the dog that I just transferred. Photopea did a fairly good job with the selection, although I definitely do see some areas that do need some work, like right over here. There's some jaggedness. So if you guys have areas like that, you can always go in and use your eraser tool. I'm just going to lower my brush size just a little bit and correct that mistake. Oops, that's still too small. And it's like it never happened. Perfect. So the image transferred over beautifully, and it's a little bit on the big side. So what I might want to do now is actually resize it. So I'm going to use the free transform function. I'm going to select edit and free transform. And I'm going to hold down shift so I can drag on the corners of the image like so, and resize it to whatever size I want. When I'm happy with the size of the image thus far, I can just go and press enter to save it, or I can click the check mark at the top in my options bar. So I'm going to show you guys how to use one other selection tool, but you guys are going to have the option to select from any of the selection tools that you like the best. I have an image of color pencils here with a mostly white background. So what I'm going to do is actually use the magic wand tool here so I can try to delete the white background with very few clicks of my mouse. I'm going to go to tool number 4, and if I right click on tool number 4, I can switch from quick selection to now magic wand. Magic wand is really great at eliminating all of one color, like if you guys have a solid color background. All I have to do is click in the white, and you can see that automatically magic wand selected most of the white in the image, so I can hit delete to get rid of it. When you guys see that transparency, again, that's Photopea's way of saying that there's no color underneath, there's no pixels. So I'm going to keep clicking on the parts of the background that I don't want and basically just keep deleting them. Okay, so I did a fairly good job right now getting rid of the background with just a few clicks of my mouse using the magic wand. So now I'm ready to go and drag this image over to my collage. Again, I'm just going to right click on the layer and select duplicate into, and from my destination options, I'm going to click on this drop down arrow, select my favorite things collage, hit OK. I'm gonna now get rid of this image of the color pencils, and now when I go into my favorite things collage, this is what it looks like. So I can see there were some areas I didn't notice earlier with the selection, and there's some streaking. If I wanted to use this part of the image, I could always just go in with my eraser tool and just like eliminate it little by little. But instead what I'm gonna do is just kind of cheat and hide it and just drag over part of the image to an area that doesn't have those streaks, so I don't longer see it. Now if I didn't like how big this was, I could of course use free transform, and again using the shift key in my keyboard, I could just drag at the corners and make it smaller. But I actually like the way that it looks right now with the color pencils being so big. So I'm going to press enter to save my changes. And I can see right now the color pencils are overlapping the dog. The reason for that is because the color pencil layer is on top of the dog layer. So I'm just gonna go and drag it underneath the dog layer, like so. And now I effectively just change the stacking order. You can see all my layers right now are listed in my layers panel. There's 2 layers called background, so I may want to go and double click on each layer and change the name. So this one is the dog layer, so I'm going to call it dog. The layer below it is the color pencil, so I'm going to call it pencils. And that's basically how I'm going to categorize each individual layer so it's easier for me to work with. Okay? There's one last thing I want to show you before I take a little break. I do have an image of frosting that I thought I had opened, but I guess I didn't, so I might want to go and open it now. I don't want to make a selection of this. I actually want to use this image of frosting as a background element. So what I'm going to do is right click on the layer, select duplicate into, and put it in my collage just like I did previously. And you guys will see that now this layer was moved in. I'm just gonna rename it. Again, I just double click on the layer and then name it. This time calling it frosting. And I'm just going to go and drag it below the pencils and below the dog. Now, you guys will see that it's now serving as my background, but I can't see that teal color that I had underneath. So, what I might want to do is actually change the layer blend mode for the frosting layer so I can just kind of blend it in with the teal color underneath. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my layer blend modes up here. The default is normal, and I'm maybe going to select the multiply layer blend mode, and you can see that I can still see the texture of the frosting, but it's now the color of my background color fill layer. You can definitely play around with different blend modes to achieve a different effect that you guys might find interesting. I know I want to use a layer blend mode called Luminosity, which does a really good job eliminating the color in the layer image and just keeping like the actual look of the image. So in this case, I just want to keep the texture, not that pink color. It's nearing the end of class. What do? Well, you can always save it as an in progress file. You can go to File, Save As, PSD, and after I select Save as PSD, I can go and check my Downloads folder and see what is now a PSD file. This means that I can go into this file at any point in time and add any changes. This is not your final draft. This means you're halfway done and you need to add changes. Welcome back, designers. It may not seem like it to you, but I actually had to stop my work, save in PSD format, and now open it back up when I'm ready to start working on my collage again. So, to open up my PSD file, all I did was go to the File menu at the top of my screen, Open, and then I opened up the Downloads folder in my computer where my PSD file was saved. I also went ahead and opened several different images that I want to use on my favorite things collage. So this morning I'm going to get started with editing this image of the cheesecake. Now you guys may notice that so far I haven't used any of the lasso selection tools. Lasso selection tools are in tool number 3, and there's a few options available. Lasso Select will have you make a free-form selection like so. It's not my favorite tool. I think it's a little bit unsophisticated and typically I tend to ignore it. I'm going to hit Control D so I can get rid of these marching ants. That's what we refer to this selection by. And then we also have Polygonal Lasso. Polygonal Lasso is not bad. It's very useful for making a selection of something kind of with sharp geometric edges, such as a building or something geometric basically. As you can see, it's not going to be very useful for something that has more organic kind of forms. So I'm going to Control D and get rid of my selection. And then I had some issues using Magnetic Lasso, on Photopea. Every time I try to use it, I'm just unable to. So I would suggest that you guys pretty much ignore Magnetic Lasso and maybe go for another tool entirely. So this morning I'm going to be using my quick selection again so I can try to maybe eliminate the background here, and I can just get the image of the cheesecake and the berries to transfer over to my collage. So I'm going to go to tool number 4, right click and select quick selection. Then I'm basically going to start and click inside the image. And so far, Photopea did a pretty decent job selecting that piece of cheesecake. This is kind of a complex image, so I'll probably need to be patient and edit this down even further than, for example, when I was selecting the image of the dog. I can see that Photopea is selecting some parts on here that I don't want it to. So I can either go and select the subtract option at the top in my workspace, so I can go and delete those parts of the background that Photopea selected, or I can hold down Alt on my keyboard and click on those areas I don't want in the background, and it's going to subtract those from the selection. So you can do it using the shortcut, you can do it the long way by going to your options bar. It's gonna be up to you. Okay, this is definitely a very complex image. So if I had the option to use layer masks within this particular project, I would actually opt to do a layer mask instead, but since I'm only using selection tools right now, all I'm gonna do is go to the select menu at the top of my screen, select inverse, and hit delete so I can get rid of the background. It's not the best selection in the whole wide world, but for now it's gonna do. So to transfer this selection over, just like always, I'm gonna right click on the layer, select duplicate into, and under my destination I'm gonna select my favorite things collage, click OK, and I'm ready to now go and X out of this image because I no longer need it. If I go back to my favorite things collage, you can see where the image of the cheesecake was added. Right now it's kind of between some other layers, so I may want to move it up. Potentially I may want to move it down. What I know for sure what I'm going to do is double click on the name where it says background and label it cheesecake, because I expect to have several more layers and I don't want to get confused by them. You can see I moved that cheesecake layer up at the very top. It's very big, so I'm going to resize it so that I can put it somewhere else without it blocking the other images that I have. So to do that, I make sure that layer selected, I go to free transform, I hold down shift on my keyboard, and I drag at the corners so that my image looks perfectly sized, and then I figure out where I might want to place this image. I think that corner works well. I'm not sure I like the way that looks, so I might want to go and select edit and transform and rotate it or flip it. So there's different options for you guys to select from within transform. If I wanted to rotate something by 90 degrees, for example, instead of my trying to figure out, I could just select rotate 90 degrees. But I'm not interested in doing that right now, so instead I'm just going to select transform and flip horizontally, and you guys will see that it made my image flip over to the other side. I'm still not so crazy about that particular selection, and I see a mistake I made here with the transferring over. So if this image is just not working for me, I can just go ahead and delete it. Don't freak out if an image is just not working, it's giving you a hard time. Just go for another image. That's perfectly okay. So let's see if I have better luck with the image of the hand. So here what I'm gonna do is use my good old handy dandy quick selection tool and select one of the hands to go and put in my collage. I'm just clicking inside of the hand itself with my quick selection tool. I can see that Photopea added the image of the boy. So using Alt on my keyboard, I'm just gonna go and select those areas I want to get rid of here. In this case, the face of the boy and the hair, etc., because all I want to keep right now are the hands, specifically the colorful parts of the hands. I'm gonna pause my video because this will take me a few minutes. I'll be right back once I'm finished that selection. And I'm back. It may not seem like it to you, but let me tell you, this was a really difficult object to select. The hand was it was definitely time consuming here on Photopea. I think if I had been using Photoshop, I would have had an easier time with it, but Photopea is completely free, so there's only so much we can ask of it. So you can see I've gone and selected just the one hand, and I have a mostly empty background now. So I think what I'm going to do to make my life easier when I go and resize this object in my collage is I'm going to just go and crop out most of the backgrounds. So using the crop tool, in tool number 5 in your toolbar, I'm just gonna go and drag a box around the hand like so, and everything inside of this box I'm gonna keep. Everything on the outside of the box is gonna be getting rid of. So I'm gonna press the check mark in the options bar, and you can see Photopea did a fairly good job deleting all of that background. If I wanted to be a little bit more specific, I could go and possibly just make the crop box a little smaller, but right now it's not really my intention to do that. Okay, perfect. So now I can go and transfer this over to my collage. Here's another way to do it. I could go and press Ctrl A, and when I press Ctrl A in my keyboard, you could see that I have now some marching ants around my layer. I'm gonna press Ctrl C to copy, and then when I go to my collage, I'm gonna press Ctrl V like Victor, and you can see that my hand pasted onto the collage. So that's just another way to transfer images over. If you missed it, I'm gonna try it again. So Ctrl Z to get rid of that selection. Here's the hand. I Ctrl A to make a selection. I know a selection's been made because I see those marching ants around the layer. Ctrl C to copy that selection, and then Ctrl V like Victor to paste that selection into my collage. So those are all ways that you can definitely go and transfer different layers up into your collage document. So right now I see it has a generic name, so I'm going to double click on that hand layer and name it something specific, and now I can go and place it somewhere in my collage that I want it to go. I might just put it maybe behind the dog and behind the pencils, so I can change the stacking order by just moving those layers around in my layers panel. And I might go also and possibly resize it using free transform, just like I was doing before. I can also rotate it if I go and drag at the corners and then put my hand in a different orientation altogether. Please be mindful that Photopea will lag on you sometimes. You just have to be patient, okay? Alright, that looks really good. So I just press enter to save my changes. And I can either stop here or I can add another image. So far, if I look at my layers panel, I have 4 images that I added in. So obviously the dog that's front and center in my foreground. Then I layered those pencils underneath the dog, and then the hand is of course underneath the pencils and the dog, and behind that I'm just toggling the visibility icons here. I have this image of frosting that I changed the blend mode to so that it would blend in with that color background. So you don't necessarily have to fill your collage with a ton of stuff. Once you're happy with the way you've layered images, once you're happy with the result, you can stop and save your final draft. Here's what I'd like to do though before I save my final draft. I would like, let me just fix that. Let's move some things over. I would like to actually apply an adjustment layer to this to kind of unify all the different colors that I have in this image. So far you can see I've added all these different images. They all come with their own color saturations and built-in contrast levels, but I want to go and adjust it so that they all have one uniform lighting source, when they all have one uniform color. To do that, I can just use an adjustment layer. So I'm going to make sure I click on my very top layer, which in this case is a dog, because I want the adjustment layer to apply to everything below the adjustment layer. So I want my adjustment layer to be at the top. So having selected that top layer, I'm going to go down to my layers panel and I'm going to go to my new adjustment layer icon, and I might select, for example, photo filter to start off with. Having just applied that photo filter, you can see that now my collage has this very warm light to it. If I don't like the way that looks, I can always double click on the color for the photo filter and just apply a different color altogether. So let's say I wanted to make my collage look a little cooler. I could apply a blue color to it. I'm gonna press OK in my color picker, and you can see that that blue color filter is now applied to all the images in my collage. If I go and I don't like that particular effect, I can always just toggle the visibility of that photo filter and it's gonna go to this image back by default. So I'm just gonna apply a nice warming filter to my collage because I want to try to unify these images the best that I can, and that looks really good so far. Then I might want to go and play around with the contrast of the images so far. So I'm going to go back to the new adjustment layer and I'm going to select brightness and contrast, and I can basically just go and drag at the slider for contrast. And you can see how the shadows, the colors, everything's getting a lot more intense in my image. For brightness, if I go and drag the slider to the left, you can see my image is darkening up completely. So I'm actually going to leave brightness at the default 0, and I'm going to increase my contrast just a little bit up to about 40 points here. You guys are obviously going to adjust your contrast depending on what you see in front of you. Okay, and maybe the last thing I want to do is go and use my vibrance adjustment. This is all completely optional, by the way, and maybe increase the saturation of the image just slightly so that the colors are a little bit more intense. Because I have that photo filter adjustment already applied, they're all kind of warm colors, but if I toggle that visibility for the photo filter, you can see that I increase the saturation on all the colors in their original images. So just something to be aware of if you're going to use saturation. So I'm just increasing the saturation up to about 25 points, and I might increase the vibrance of the image up to about 20 points, and that's looking really good to me so far. So I feel ready to go and submit this collage to Canvas. Now, I had mentioned earlier, ideally this is a project that I would go and print and display in our school so others can appreciate how talented you are. So Before I do that, I need to go and select an image format that is going to be printing friendly. Something that is going to be versatile for it to be viewed on a screen, but also versatile enough that when I print it, it's going to be a decent quality. So I'm going to go to File and Export As, and I'm going to select PDF. Okay, because of lagging time, it did take a few minutes for this options box to pop up, but I can see the format is saved to PDF. If I wanted to go and reduce the size of the overall work, I could do so right now by changing the number of pixels, or I can save it to, change it to inches. But I want this to be print perfectly on a letter size sheet of paper, so I'm gonna leave it as is, and I'm just gonna select Save. And momentarily, this file is gonna download to my downloads folder. You can see at the bottom of my screen, it's presently downloading. It is slightly large, so I'm just gonna wait for it to download before I check. And that's what it looks like so far. I think it looks really impressive and I'm very happy with it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and submit that to Canvas. I can't wait to see what you guys create. I'm really excited to see your collages. If you guys have any questions or concerns, you guys know how to reach me. Bye!